Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. This will be another movie review from a writer's perspective. And today I'll be reviewing The Fall of the House of Usher. This screenplay was written by Richard Matheson, and it was based on Edgar Allan Poe's story of the same name. The suggestion for this movie came up in my YouTube recommendations, and it is hosted by a channel called Retro Central. I mentioned them because I looked through their channel and they have a lot of old movies, and I know I'll be watching a lot of them soon, and I thought you would like to go and check out their channel. Now, this movie was produced and directed by Roger Corman, who was a favorite director at Hammer Productions. When the movie came on the screen, it said this movie version was altered, restored, and/or improved from its original form by James H. Nicholson and Samuel Z. Arkoff, and it was in CinemaScope and color. I'm not sure what the original movie looked like, but the color and clarity of this movie on YouTube was amazing. I'll start with a short plot summary without spoilers. Philip Winthrop visits his fiancée, Madeline Usher, at her home. As the movie opens, you see Philip riding through a dark, gothic-looking wasteland, and off in the distance, you get a glimpse of a mansion house. And even at a distance, the house and the land around it appear to be desolate, old, and in need of repair. The Gothic atmosphere is one of the best I've ever seen. The Gothic mansion, the scary trees, the rolling fog. If you're a Gothic movie fan, within 2 minutes, you'll be hooked. Now, Philip knocks at the front door, and after a first weird hesitation, the butler finally sticks his head out to ask what he wants. Philip says he is there to see Madeline Usher. The butler hesitates and then tells him, "You can't see her, she's ill." And Philip insists on seeing her, and reluctantly, the butler lets him in. The mystery starts right from the beginning. You can tell by the butler's apprehension and reluctance to cooperate that he's hiding something. As a writer, I couldn't help but notice how the director or actor, or both, used this deliberately flat demeanor and the hesitation as a means to lay down the mystery and suspense that holds up all throughout the movie. So after insisting on seeing his fiancée, Madeline, the butler takes Philip up to her brother Roderick's room. Now, this movie was shot on sets that were built or borrowed for this movie production, and each scene is aesthetically beautiful, especially for the Gothic fans. The camera pans the whole beautiful room downstairs and the staircase as they proceed up to Roderick's room. And just as the butler is about to knock on the door, Vincent Price opens the door and asks, "What is the meaning of this?" And you get a sense right from the get-go that he's at least an eccentric. As a side note, Vincent Price never looked better in a movie. I don't know whether it was because he was still young and handsome, or whether it had something to do with this CinemaScope improvement that was done to the film, but he just looked amazing. So Roderick tells Philip he can't see his sister because she is ill and he has to leave. And Philip stands his ground and refuses to leave before he sees her. Roderick is adamant that he is not going to see Madeline, and the power struggle between these two characters begins right away. Now, during this first standoff, Madeline enters the room, and you can see that she is happy to see Philip. She scolds her brother Roderick and demands that Philip be allowed to stay. Through gritted teeth, Roderick acquiesces for the moment. Then Roderick tells him to come into his room and proceeds to go into a long, melodramatic explanation about his oversensitive hearing issues. And as a viewer, you first think he's a hypochondriac. Now, I love Gothic movies with a lot of melodrama, and no one does melodrama like Vincent Price. As the story unfolds, Roderick keeps telling the fiancée to leave every 5 minutes, but Philip refuses. As this initial power struggle between Philip and Roderick, and then Roderick and Madeline plays out, the house is now emitting sounds of cracking and crumbling. They start subtle enough, but are unmistakable. Philip looks out the window from his bedroom and he sees a large fissure crack in the side of the house. The butler comes up to call him for dinner, and as Philip walks through the living area, the ceiling begins to crack and crumble a little bit, and a huge chandelier starts shaking and then falls, almost hitting the fiancé. Now, as a writer, I noticed that at this point, the viewer believes that it's happening from the fissure in the house. It's confirming that the house needs repair. The falling chandelier was a shock when it happened, but the plot didn't reveal too much. Just a little foreshadowing was allowed to leak out. This movie will teach writers about the pacing of clues that drop, watching the way the writer allows one little mystery at a time to slip out. By the time the movie approaches the middle, the weird, eccentric behavior of the brother continues, along with the secretiveness of the butler. During this time, the fiancé Philip learns that the brother believes their family bloodline has been cursed, and the thought of Madeline leaving with him, getting married and having children would be disastrous. Roderick believes the family evil will be bred into future generations if either he or his sister have children. The viewer can tell that Philip, who plays the straight man, so to speak, against all of the eccentricities of the brother, he thinks the brother is crazy. He, as well as the viewer, can see that Madeline has also adopted her brother's crazy beliefs. Philip concludes that he needs to get Madeline away from the brother, and all of his problems will be solved. She does eventually agree to leave with him, and she seems very happy about it. That's all I'll tell you so as not to ruin the story for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. Now, what can writers learn from this movie? This movie can teach a writer about the slow release of these small bits of mystery, the eccentricities, the tiny fragments of the story, and how this process does lay a net of continual mystery and suspense that continues throughout this movie all the way until the end. This would also be a great movie for a writer to reverse engineer. What I see as a writer is that this plot line is a generic one, in the sense that it will show you how to do this slow release of clues and the conflict between four characters. This plot line can be overlaid onto many original storylines. So let me know in the comments if you would be interested to learn how to reverse engineer a movie from a writing perspective. Now let's talk about the sets, the costuming, and the props. They were all fantastic and classic Gothic. I love movies shot on sets that were constructed for the movie because they are always beautiful no matter which angle the camera is facing. This movie will thrill anyone who loves Hammer movies, who loves old movies, or who loves Gothic movies. Now, I don't want to over-rave about them, so that's all I'm going to say about the sets. Now let's talk about character development. Vincent Price was perfect for the role of the eccentric brother. Watch how he uses his facial expressions to show his constant disapproval. Watch how he takes the melodrama to a high pitch, but yet he never goes over the top. Between the set design, his costuming, and dialogue, his character was fully and highly developed. Remember, the movie was only 1.5 hours long, so he gets an A+ for his acting in this movie. Now let's talk about Madeline, the sister, who was played by Myrna Fahey. She was beautiful and played the somewhat submissive sister very well. There is one scene where she suddenly makes the viewer think that maybe she's in on something. Maybe she's not who we are led to believe she is. It happens in an instant. But it can teach a writer how one subtle movement and one sentence of dialogue can be used to twist the plot a bit. There are a few innocent romantic scenes, and both actors had great chemistry. She is called upon to be a bit more of a submissive sister after the movie gets going, but I don't want to go into anything she does or doesn't do. Watch how she handles the changing of her character. So she too gets A+ in acting for the movie. Now let's talk about Philip, who played the straight man against all of the gothic mystery and suspense going on around him. He was the glue between the other characters and all of the drama that plays out in the movie. He was young, handsome, looked great in his olden days costume, and played a convincing romantic lead. As I said earlier, he and Myrna Fahey had great chemistry together. However, he wasn't called upon to do much deep or difficult acting with his facial expressions. He played a great romantic lead. He hit his acting marks, delivered his lines, and played against the eccentricities of these other characters. So he too gets A+ for the acting. And now let's talk about Harry Ellerby, the actor who played the butler. As I mentioned earlier, he was essential in laying down this net of mystery and suspense by his responses to everything spoken to him in the movie. He was a devoted service employee, but also seemed to have a streak of submissiveness about him too. One minute he appeared to be submissive, and another minute he appeared to be fearful. It made you wonder, what is he hiding? What does he know? Why is he hesitating when anyone asks him a question? As an actor, he aced the service bowing, the yes sirring, and he conveyed an attitude of someone who was comfortable in a life of service. Now, even though he appears to be a second string character because he's only the butler, he kept the viewers always wondering why he was so reluctant to answer and what he may be hiding. He played a large role in holding up his side of the net of mystery and suspense in the plotline than he appears to at first blush. I really enjoyed watching him. A writer can learn a lot by watching his facial expressions, his body movements, and subtle emotional reactions to everything. He is a study in creating a mysterious character, so he too gets A+ in his acting. Now let's talk about who I would recommend the movie to. I would recommend this movie for any Gothic movie lovers, or for any old movie lovers, or anyone who likes the color scope or the Technicolor movies. Now, for writers especially, I would recommend this movie to anyone studying plotting, screenwriting, writing mysteries and suspense without actual crimes, and even writing Gothic romance. And I will say again that this would be a great movie to reverse engineer, to learn how the clues and mysteries were leaked into the story, one scene or one line of diagram at a time, because this plot is a masterpiece. It has a lot to teach novel authors or screenwriters. Now, the movie version I saw was free on YouTube, and I will have a link to that channel posted down below. If you watch it, please feel free to comment here on my channel on what your take on the movie was, especially if you are a writer. Now, I hope you enjoyed this movie review and that you'll give me a thumbs up and or subscribe to my channel. So I will leave you with a panel of all of my books that are available for purchase on Amazon.com, and I'll see you in the next video.